back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that St. Simon's down in Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Hey, welcome back to the program, folks. Thank you for your patience. My apologies for being a few minutes tardy here this morning. However, events have interceded, as has been often the case of late, and a little difficulty getting the stream started between the software and YouTube. But here we are. It's now 9 minutes after the hour, although my clock is still a minute behind. You can see I haven't gotten to that yet. Welcome back to the program. It is a Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. I don't know the status of whether we're doing Wednesdays with the Colonel. I am, okay. All right. Okay. So we'll do Wednesdays with the Colonel tomorrow because I have a medical appointment that was changed and I have to go to that medical appointment. So we'll do this broadcast, and once it's done, I'll wrap up and I'll head out for my medical appointment. All right, so Wednesdays with the Colonel will be tomorrow on Ronaldo's network. So thank you for that. Let's say hello to everybody here. Val Cooper is in, and Dylan Combrick, Tony Nage in from Alberta, the land of the oil sands. Trevor Bush, Gavin Comer, Jan Villon is here, and the land of Ubuntu. And then Pick Jacobs is here. We'll welcome, I think I said everybody there. Thanks for those of you tuning in. Those just joining us now, there is no musical introduction because I kept you waiting, and that's not polite. Wasn't my intent. However, let's get to it. Lots to talk about. So today, folks, we've got to talk about the primaries. They're fait accompli. I mean, we already know that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the nominees for the respective political parties. However, there were some results last night, and I will show you how the fake stream mischaracterized events, particularly the primary in Florida, which they say was devastating for Donald Trump. The protest vote against Donald Trump was devastating, yet almost similar percentages for Joe Biden in another state, and they don't say anything remotely like that. Also today, going to talk to you a bit about South Africa's election, and then I want to cover this heartbreaking story, and I'll apologize in advance now. This thing will bring you to tears. This is the story of the twisted woman who left her infant baby in her crib with a couple of bottles and went on a 10-day vacation to the Caribbean. This woman pled guilty, and she has now been sentenced to life in prison. We did not know all the details. We knew some of the information, but we now know the details of the horrific circumstances this child suffered and died in, the complete disregard for human life. And then I'm going to talk briefly about a member of the Arizona State Senate who feels the need to share that she will have an abortion with the public. People venerating and promoting the concept of abortion. It's vile and repulsive. This is pure political nonsense. This is, if a person must take that choice, it should be a private choice and not something you celebrate and tell the public about. I don't care who you are. That's a private issue. We don't care to hear about the fact that you terminated an American citizen's life, especially when you're doing it for political gain, which is what's happened there. It's unfortunate. Anyway, let's get to the news. Who else we got there? Mother should be, the mother is in jail. I reported the story, as in last year, I think it was, when this story came out. It was shocking what happened here. She left the baby, an infant, not even a toddler, in the crib. What's more horrific is that the neighbors heard the child screaming for days and didn't do anything about it. They didn't call 911. They didn't break in the house to save the child. This is sick and twisted. How people have such callous disregard for human life and the horrific suffering that this child went through, dying. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Anyway, we're going to talk about that. And if I break into tears, I'll apologize in advance, because this one is just, it makes me angry at the human condition and about humans and just how callous they are. But first off, let's go right out of the gate. I didn't say this. It's not a quote from me. Is this how black lawyers behave? This is a judge in the Thabo Bester case. Wow. A black judge says, is this how black lawyers behave? Well, maybe that's why we don't have more black lawyers in South Africa. Anyway, apparently that's a big concern in South Africa with their transformation considerations. But let's talk about this story here. News 24 reports on this. That is Judge Ratha Mokolakeng, the 5-man trial for the 2014 murder of, this isn't Thabo Bester, Bafana Bafana and Orlando Pirates goalkeeper Senzo Mweya. So the court was informed the defense attorney for accused number 1, that Mr. Muzi Sibia, was not present. So the judge presiding over the trial slammed the defense attorney's non-appearance as well as his failure to alert the court beforehand. Prosecutor George Molloy informed Judge Mokolakeng that Muzi Sibia's attorney, Tulani Ngumzulu, was not available for the day's proceedings. When I spoke to him this morning, he indicated he doesn't have a problem if the witnesses go ahead and give evidence. He arranged for one of his colleagues to stand in for him. And this is what the judge said. Is this how lawyers, black lawyers, maybe we should just tell the truth. Is this how black lawyers behave? Some of them. Maybe I should qualify that. Wow. Wow. Is this how black lawyers behave? Maybe we should just tell the truth about the conduct of black lawyers in South Africa. Wow. Scathing remarks from a black judge about black lawyers. Now, obviously, he was just angry, and not all black lawyers are represented. In fact, probably a small minority of black or white lawyers are represented by this poor behavior by this advocate or attorney, whatever you want to call it. Nonetheless, imagine for just a brief moment if a white member, particularly an Afrikaans member of the bar, sitting in a trial, said that about Dali Mpofu. Wow. Oh my goodness. They'd be hunting him with torches right now. I'm not criticizing the judge. I'm just calling out the reality that had a white judge or a white person made the same commentary. In fact, I'm certain that on my video, because I put that in the title, there'll be a few hate-wanking leftist black supremacists who show up on my channel who don't watch the video and will give me nasty comments and call me a KKK member and stuff like that because they're too lazy to watch the video. They're not my comments. They're the comments of a presiding judge in South Africa who happens to be black. I'm not saying they're appropriate. I'm not criticizing. I'm not praising the comments. I'm simply drawing the contrast. Imagine if a white man had said that about black attorneys. Can you imagine for just a brief microsecond what the outcome would have been? It wouldn't have been pretty, folks. I'll tell you that much. It would not have been pretty. And we would still hear about Jan van Riebeck and Hendrik Verwoerd and the horrors of apartheid, which were horrible. But there are more racist laws under the African National Congress than there ever were under the National Party. True statement. Menage Qua says, wow, when the few act out of line, the whole are put on. Exactly. Shaking your head. I'm with you, Menage Qua, and I hope you were listening clearly. I did not say I agree with the comment. I didn't praise it. I didn't criticize it. Also, I made it very clear that obviously this is probably a very small number of lawyers, black or white, who behave in this fashion. What I'm saying is if a white judge said that, he'd be brought up for the Judicial Services Commission. He would be disbarred. He would be removed from the bar. And nothing will happen to this black judge. Nothing at all. People will look the other way, just like they do every time a black person says something like this. But when a white person says something like this, wow. Anyway, so enough of that story. Parliament is calling for an investigation by the Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, into the SAA-Takaso collapse deal. The irregular, dare I say, unlawful takeover by this consortium in private, in secret, in opaque conditions by none other than Pravin Gordhan. And now apparently it's falling apart or fell apart. The Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises unanimously agreed to recommend for the Special Investigating Unit or any other law enforcement agency to investigate the collapse deal that planned to sell 51% of SAA to Takaso. Allegations laid by former DG, Director General, include that Takaso was not initially on the list of companies that submitted bids. The assets SAA were undervalued, and certain individuals interfered and handpicked Takaso as preferred bidder, and some signatures on the sale documents, including his own, were forged. Wow, that's the Director General who said that. That's crazy. Menage says, I didn't put that on you, but get ready for people to say that later. Yeah, I know. But Menage Qua, but my responsibility is to report on the news and analyze it. And ignoring this story would continue to allow the woke lunacy to just perpetuate life. We cannot do that. We cannot accept when people mistreat others, whether they're black, they're white, they're brown, they're Jewish, they're Christian, they're Muslim, they're Wiccan, they're Buddhist. We cannot accept that when people are treated differently. Equal justice before the law is what is supposed to happen. So, my point here in pointing out this story is that the judge said it. And imagine the uproar. South Africa's Twitter sphere would be melting down right now if, say, a white justice had said that about black judges, about black lawyers. do away with SAA. I said it should have been liquidated. South African Airways should have been liquidated. It's not a going concern. It hasn't made money in 14 years. Hey, Sue, welcome. Well, Jabba the Hutt says we shouldn't cut off relations with Iran or with Russia. Constructive engagement. Now here is the irony. Here's a little history lesson for those of you under the age of 30 that aren't historians. Here's a little history lesson for you, those of you over the age of 30 who don't pay attention to history. In the 1980s, the Reagan administration under Chester Crocker had a policy with South Africa's apartheid government called constructive engagement. What that meant was rather than cut off diplomatic ties, we will work with South Africa to convince them of the merits of ending apartheid. We would work with South Africa to ensure human rights. That was the Reagan administration's policy. Now, where will the criticism come in from Naledi Pandor for espousing the exact same foreign policy that Chester Crocker applied to South Africa, except she's doing it when it comes to Iran? Think about that, folks. Think about that. What do you have to say, Minaj? What about that? What about that? Isn't that funny? Constructive engagement, because that's what she's talking about. We shouldn't cut off engagement with Iran or take a hard position on Russia. Jabba says South Africa is trying to isolate Israel in various ways for its reported human rights violations and has taken a firm position on the Israel-Hamas war, but don't expect it to do the same when it comes to Iran and Russia, according to Naledi Pandor. She told a group of American fools this week. In both cases, the best thing South Africa can do is keep talking, Pandor said in a conversation with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. In the case of Iran, South Africa seeks to be an example of the benefits of democracy. Really? What are you going to show the Iranians? The Iranians have water. They have electricity. They have elections. They have roads, not potholes. What are the benefits of democracy that you're going to show the Iranians? What are the seeds, the fruits of democracy that South Africa has borne as a consequence? Well, okay, if you're black and you're white and you have sex, you won't go to jail. Okay, that's good. You don't have to carry passes, but that was done away long before apartheid went away. What exactly are the benefits of democracy in South Africa? Potholes, no electricity, 85 murders a day, collapsed infrastructure, Chinese infiltration and control of the economy, shedding jobs like viral particles. Please tell us, Lady Pandor, what benefits of democracy are you showing the Iranians as an example? Arguably, their system works better than yours when it comes to basic human needs. She says it seeks to keep lines of communication open and help mediate peace. Really? Really? That's what you're doing. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call constructive engagement. Constructive engagement. Remember that? See, this is the problem for these idiots, these leftists, these hate wankers who like to redefine history and pretend that it all began yesterday or with Donald Trump or with Joe Biden. No. We have a history here. We have a clear history. And what Naledi Pandor is advocating and arguing that South Africa is doing with Iran and Russia is exactly what the Reagan administration under Chester Crocker did with South Africa in the 1980s. Yet they were roundly criticized for it. They were supporters of racism, of racial segregation, of bigotry, right-wing zealots. No, none of that's true. None of that's true. They followed a path that they believe was the most effective. South Africa is doing the same. Well, did it work for Chester Crocker and Reagan? Maybe it did. But more likely, the collapse of the Soviet Union is what changed everything. What about Naledi Pandor? Do you really think that Iran will begin recognizing women's rights and treat women equally? Not going to happen. Do you really think Iran will stop funding terrorism? Not going to happen. Just because South Africa sets an example of a democracy, a failed democracy. Also, don't expect South Africa to agree with the classification of Iran as an authoritarian regime. For me, I don't know whether Iran are an authoritarian regime, said Naledi Pandor. Are you serious? Are you serious? Pressed on the matter, she said she was not aware of Iran being authoritarian and didn't have that definition in my logbook. Logbook? What are you, a truck driver? I do have a concern about women's rights in Iran, and this is something that I've discussed with the government of Iran. Well, we can see how it's improved the status of women. Your impressive democratic credentials, Jabba, number 86 on the ANC's list of best qualified members of their party to serve in parliament. Number 86. 86, not 6, 86. She added, I believe that we have to do as South Africa's, What we have to do as South Africa is not close off engagement with any country, but use our own democratic success as an example to others. Again, I'm going to have to make a video just on this. What democratic success? Constructive engagement, folks. That's what we're talking about. Wow. I'm going to make a video just on that probably tonight and release it tomorrow. Yep. All right. So, well, got to give the law enforcement a little bit of props. I mean, it's a bit late. It should have been planned on 6 months ago, but hey, we could have done rehearsals. We could have ensured the funding was there. We could have ensured vehicles were operational. We could have ensured communication networks would work. We could have done all of this. We could have had dry runs on this 2 or 3 times by now. But now the South African police force is actually getting its act together. Just days before the May 29th election, they're planning on extra police presence at hospitals in KwaZulu-Natal and hotspots. Extra law enforcement expect to be deployed to at least 4 hotspot areas in KwaZulu-Natal ahead of the May 29th elections. This forms part of the multi-party political intervention committee working closely with the Independent Electoral Commission and the Justice, Crime Prevention, and Security clusters, the incompetent sector cluster. Yep. Problematic areas like Ngomo, eThekwini, Bergville, and Mapumulo have been politically fueled conflict given special attention in proactive areas. Yep. Now, Lady Pandor is among 3 candidates that will be considered for the premier list for Western Cape. It was not decided unless that came out today, and I didn't see it. Jacob Zuma has failed yet again to remove Billy Downer from his case. Says he'll appeal again. Send this man to jail and be done with it. Former President Jacob Zuma has failed to remove lead prosecutor Billy Downer from his arms deal. I'm sorry, but maybe I missed this. The arms deal was 1999, and this man hasn't faced justice yet, 26 years, 25 years later. A quarter century, Jacob Zuma has evaded justice, or at least judgment. He's evaded judgment, if not justice. Wow. Pietermaritzburg High Court Judge Nkosinati Chile on Wednesday dismissed Zuma's application, saying he was not persuaded Zuma had succeeded in establishing retention of Downer could infringe on his right to a fair trial. The flummoxed Zuma's counsel advocate Dalian Pofu indicated he wanted reasons in order to take the ruling on appeal. Don't take it on appeal. Just go to court. If your client is innocent, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Well, the ANC wants to enforce a banning order, MK, according to Dalian Pofu. Dalian Pofu pulls out the shadows, the seeds of the National Party era to say that MK is trying to the ANC is trying to ban MK. The ANC wants to place a banning order on the Mkhonto Sizwe party by asking the Electoral Court to order that its registration as a political party is unlawful. The ANC asked the court to rule that the decision by the Electoral Commission of South Africa to register the MK party after rejecting its initial application was unlawful. So basically he's saying they want to ban MK. No, they want to eliminate a competitor that is eating their lunch in KwaZulu-Natal and now also in Gauteng. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what's your experience with home affairs? Has any South African present in the audience? I know Americans and Finns and Scandinavians and, well, Finns are Scandinavians, Hungarians and Kiwis and Americans. We have no stake in this. We haven't dealt with home affairs. But for South Africans, what's your experience with home affairs? Apparently, it's very good. According to the governments, it's very good. Home Affairs Minister says his department is generally praised for its effectiveness. And the data collected by the department is evidence of this. Wow. In a question and answer session, the Minister of Home Affairs, Aaron Motsoaledi, was asked whether his department had solved the problem of long queues and denial of service on reaching the counter after a long time in the queue. He said yes. He said the average waiting time for services is just 7 minutes for pre-booked services. So if you book something ahead of time, it only takes you 7 minutes to get in and out. It takes 10 minutes for birth, marriage, and death services, which I find fascinating. It takes me longer than 10 minutes to fill out a single birth certificate. How could they manage that in 10 minutes? And just 15 minutes for walk-in services. So if you just came in off the street, you go to Home Affairs, you're done in 15 minutes. That's astounding. That is better. Folks, that is better than the DMV in Pennsylvania. Who's out in 15 minutes? I walked into the DMV here in Pennsylvania, and there was no one in front of me. I waited 5 minutes. I was called. I went over. I spent about 5 minutes with the lady. She went through the stuff at one table. I had to go back, sit down, and wait to be called to the photo section, and another 5 minutes. So that's already 15 minutes in a place with nobody in it with an effective, efficient service. And then I did my photograph. I had to sign it digitally. They had to print the thing out. It took me a total of about 25 minutes for an effective bureaucracy to get it done when there was no queue. So I find it a little hard to accept that if you have a pre-booked service, you're in and out in 7 minutes. 15 minutes for walk-in. That seems a bit far-fetched. A bit far-fetched. Home affairs in Rustburg is very bad. Way to travel 200 kilometers to another town to do the thing we need to get done. Exactly. Thank you. Exactly. Thank you, Pip. That's my point. I think Motoledi is smoking crack cocaine or simply lying to the public. Well, this is just the beginning. The ANC, according to Fikile Mbalula, plans more legal action, ladies and gentlemen. More legal action. Yep. The former president took our asset and decided to run with it. Yeah, because we all know that Fikile Mbalula was a MK warrior in the bush. Not. The ANC intends to drag former President Jacob Zuma into further legal action in its challenge against MK. Electoral Court in Bloemfontein heard the arguments on Tuesday in the ANC's legal challenge to have MK, which is named after its disbanded military wing, deregistered. Speaking after the court hearing, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula described the hearing as the beginning of the governing party's fight against its former president. If Zuma wants to form a party, it's fine. He can call it Mshlozi Zuma. He can call it whatever he wants to call it, but we will never leave him to run away with MK. Mkhonto Wesizwe belongs to the ANC. It belongs to the people of South Africa. He took our asset and decided to run with it. Well, the problem with saying it belongs to the people of South Africa means it doesn't belong to the ANC. It belongs to 63 million South Africans. So you better walk back that statement there, Fikile Mbalula. Well, ladies and gentlemen, did you get a pay raise? Did anybody get a pay rise? Anybody here get a pay rise? Not me. I didn't get a pay rise. Nothing. Anybody get a pay rise? Well, government workers in South Africa are getting a 4.7 pay rise on April 1st. Congratulations. Who's paying for that? Well, if you pay taxes or you buy something, you are. Yep. Or if you're a bank loaning money to South Africa, you're paying for it. Minister of Public Service Administration, Noxlo Kivit, has announced that non-senior management service workers in government will see salary hikes of 4.7% on April 1st. Considering the current economic climate and need for fiscal discipline, the government will implement a 4.7 salary increment for public servants in 2024. Fiscal discipline. Fiscal discipline would have been no pay raise. That's fiscal discipline. Look, I'm not begrudging government workers' pay, but I mean, what do South Africans get for that 4.7% pay raise? Well, according to Pick Jacobs, it took an hour to get an ID and then had to wait 2 weeks to get it. So that's what you get for the pay rise these people are getting? Beverly says the bill's been passed in all provinces. Okay, let me give you a temporary, Bev, let me give you a temporary spanner there. Come on, what's going on here? Add as a moderator, standard moderator. Okay, Bev, you are now a standard moderator. You can share the link here. I'll take the moderator spanner away from you after you've shared the link. It's just a temporary thing because only spanners can share links on here. It keeps people from putting porn links in chat. It's a YouTube function. So yeah, please share that, and then we'll take a look at that when I get a chance. Well, the Western Cape government seeks the Special Investigating Unit to probe into yet another World Cup scandal of government officials riding on the taxpayers' dollar to go watch rugby in France. I had to pay for all that crap out of my pocket. And trust me, I didn't make any money off of the World Cup. In fact, all I got was harassed by World Rugby. Fake. Basic income for my garden went up by 8%. Wow. Zuma's having a tough time lately. Glad FNB closed his account. Yes, I agree. But that's just one account. Western Cape government wants to know why these people went to the World Cup. Western Cape government wants the Special Investigating Unit to probe the Tewaterskloof municipality over officials' attendance at the Rugby World Cup final in France. The deputy mayor and council speaker jetted off to France in October just in time for the match. The municipality, run by a coalition of the ANC, the Good Party, and the Patriotic Alliance, has been silent about the cost of the trips, trying to remain opaque and not let the public know about public expenditures of their own money. Well, Marcus Justa, the disgraced chief executive of Steinhoff, the disgraced chief officer of Steinhoff, has been hit with a massive fine. Sounds like Donald Trump. Yep, 475 million rand over false finances. Financial Sector Conduct Authority has hit disgraced former Steinhoff CEO Marcus Justa with a 475 million administrative penalty for contraventions of the Financial Markets Act related to his reporting on the financial position of Steinhoff. So is this only Marcus Justa responsible for the fraud that took place at Steinhoff, just Marcus Houston. He did all by himself. No auditors were involved. No people in the corporation who prepared the sales. No one doctored the numbers. No one presented false information to him. He must have taken all the work done by all of his staff at Steinhoff, sat at home at night, put it in a spreadsheet, doctored the numbers, printed it out, printed a signature block, and signed it. Is that what happened? Why is it just one person is guilty of this? I find it hard to believe. This is criminal conspiracy, if anything. Wow. The FSCA has decided to impose an administrative penalty of $475 million that includes a contribution of $10 million to reimburse them for reasonable costs incurred in connection with the investigation of the contravention interest on the amount of $475 at the rate of 11.75% calculated from the date of this order or the date of the payment. Wow. 12% interest on that. That's insane. The extent and dishonesty and manipulation of the financial results of Steinhoff between 2014 and 2017 and how its financial position was reported meant the publications did not fairly represent its financial position. They were false, deceptive, and misleading. They failed to provide useful financial information to investors, lenders, and other creditors. So will the $475 million be paid to investors or creditors? No. The South African government will pocket that money. So what exactly is the purpose of that fine? The Independent Online has launched its 2024 election portal. Yeah, the IOL, hardly an objective publication, has published its portal. Well, let's talk about that, ladies and gentlemen. IOL, one of South Africa's leading news platforms, has launched its 2024 elections portal, providing comprehensive coverage of South Africa's upcoming May 29th elections. One of the standout features of the portal is the live voting results, which allowing users to track the election outcomes as they unfold on election day. This real-time data enables voters to stay informed about the latest developments. Well, here's what the portal looks like, folks, from the IOL, and I'll give you the link for that. Did Bev put the link? She did. Bev put the link in. Let me get back to that. Here is the link. So save this as a bookmark, and you can check it out at your leisure, or as we say in America, your leisure. Okay, so let me so that's a YouTube video. That's from the Daily Friend. That's okay. Thank you for that. That's not really going to help me. It's not really going to help me. I thought you had an article for that. Okay, so thank you for the link, though, Bev. Okay, all right. I've taken the spanner away. Nothing personal, just what I promised to do. Yeah, Zuma lost his second appeal. That's like his fifth appeal, isn't it, Grasshopper? I would have sworn he'd done this over and over again. Expropriation moves to the next stage. Okay. All right. Well, I didn't see that report anywhere in the press. That's what I was getting. I thought it was a link to the press. Anyway, right. South African Post Office is closing. Yes, more people out of work. Yes, I'm aware of that. It's bankrupt. It's been bankrupt for a long time. So that's the portal. There you go, right there. There's the portal, and you can, I guess, pick on one of the parties. Let's go with MK. Let's see what they've got to say. Here's all the news reports on MK. Let's see what they've got on the Freedom Front Plus, if anything. Freedom Front Plus. Oh, they do have stories in the Freedom. Not one of those stories is about the Freedom Front Plus. Look at that. Look at that. The link for the Freedom Front Plus, here's one down here. Counselor threatens woman with rape and murder. That's from January. That's it. The first story about the Freedom Front Plus is in the third row. I'll bet there's a bunch on the DA. Let's see. Yep, there. DA's mentioned here a couple times. There's the post office. Yep. Anyway, so that's the elections portal. It's early days. They probably got a lot of time to put stuff into it. A Peter Maritzburg woman pleads guilty to murdering his ex-wife. He shot the gospel singer Delana Cader Rowlands 12 times on Mother's Day Eve. Wow. A Peter Maritzburg man pled guilty to killing his ex-wife on the eve of Mother's Day, said he was truly remorseful for his actions. Oh, sure. Ian Rawlings pled guilty to the Peter Maritzburg High Court on Tuesday for the 2023 murder of his ex-wife, Delana Carmen Rawlins, a gospel singer. In his guilty plea handed over to the court by his defense counsel, Advocate Brad Osborne, Rawlins outlined the events leading up to the murder. He had attended a party with her. They spent time together the day before despite being divorced a month earlier. Gone shopping, bought her an outfit to wear at the party. Various male guests were discussing Delana and her relationship with another man. It caused me to confront the deceased, and then we became involved in a loud and acrimonious argument, which resulted in us being asked to leave the party. So, anyway, he later came back and murdered her, shot her 12 times. Wow, that's a passion killing if ever you saw one. Zimbabwean farmers continue to struggle with the effects of El Nino. The child is affecting the weather patterns. Ladies Konya's maize field in northeastern Zimbabwe is normally green at this time of the year, but it's already parched yellow. The drought from the El Nino weather pattern has withered leaves, wilted cobs, and raised the specter of hunger for the 38-year-old and millions of others. On a good year, we would be relying on fresh maize, pumpkins, and groundnuts, but there is nothing at all in the fields at this time, said the small-scale farmer. More than 13 million people across southern Africa can't put enough food on the table, and the number is expected to surge in the coming months as a result of months of poor rains kicking in, according to the United Nations. But not to worry, folks, because the United States will rise to the occasion and will feed Southern Africans, as we always do almost every single year, and never get any credit for it. The evil, racist, systemically racist white America sending food to starving Zimbabweans, which we've done for 25 years to keep them from starving to death. But we won't get any credit for that. But who cares? You do what's right, moral, and just, regardless of whether you get credit for it or not. And when they call you names. Well, the United States is mulling over its options in the Sahel after the military junta threw out the U.S. military, is in the process of throwing out the U.S. military from Niger as a consequence of Joe Biden's feckless, incompetent, moronic foreign policy in the Sahel. The United States has received mixed signals from Niger following the military junta's weekend announcement it revoked an accord allowing U.S. troops to operate there. Air Force General C.Q. Brown, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, did not elaborate on these mixed signals, but his comments appear to suggest at least some support within Niger's ruling junta for continued U.S. military presence. As you saw over the course of the weekend, there were some announcements from Niger about our relationship, but ever since then, there has been some mixed signals that we received, he told a conference in Ramstein Air Base. So we'll continue to make plans and prepare if we stay or depart. Well, Joe Biden's failed foreign policy causes U.S. to lose its foothold in Niger. World Rugby going through some massive changes in the rules. The laws are changing in World Rugby, trying to speed the game up, trying to eliminate the DuPont advantage, among other things. Very extensive. I'm not going to cover all of it here, but World Rugby is considering reducing the tackle height in the elite game and a global trial of the 20-minute red card as part of a radical plan to broaden the appeal of the sport. The 20-minute red card, the way that works, folks, is that if someone gets a red card, rather than losing a player for the entire match, you lose that player for 20 minutes. They're gone for good. However, a replacement player can come in after 20 minutes. We've tried this at Major League Rugby on behalf of World Rugby, and it's worked very well. It's been much more effective. It definitely makes an impact on the game. Let me think a second. I keep getting a hair that's just hanging down there. It definitely has an impact on the game that results in a much better game rather than simply kicking someone out, because players being down, especially if you go down more than one player for red cards, that shouldn't be something the rest of the team pays a penalty for, but it is the way its system is set up. So changes coming to World Rugby to speed the game up, and we'll see if they're controversial or if they're popular. Meanwhile, in Myanmar, there are no bidders for the court-ordered auction of the house where Myanmar's Aung San Suu Kyi was detained for years. This house in dispute between her and her siblings, and the government ordered that it be sold. Look, it's Hillary Rodham Clinton walking with Aung San Suu Kyi back in 2011. No bidders appeared in a court-ordered auction Wednesday of the family home Myanmar's imprisoned former leader Aung San Suu Kyi, where she had been held under house arrest for nearly 15 years. Many in Myanmar view the house as a historical landmark of her nonviolent struggle against military rule, for which she won the Nobel Peace Prize. The court in January ordered the house and a 1.9 hectare property in Yangon to be sold at a minimum price of $90 million, with the proceeds to be split between her and her estranged older brother. Lawyers had challenged the auction order. Well, the 78-year-old is now serving a 27-year prison sentence in a series of cases brought by the military, which illegally overthrew her and her elected government in February 2021. Her supporters and independents say the cases are an attempt to discredit her and legitimize the military's fraudulent seizure of power from the civilian government. Well, in a shocking turn of events, the Prime Minister of Ireland, who just came to America, has resigned. What's going on in the Emerald Isle? The Prime Minister has resigned. Ireland's Prime Minister Leo Varadkar announces his resignation. Leo Varadkar says he's stepping down as leader of the governing Fine Gael party. In the surprise announcement today, he said he would also relinquish his role as Prime Minister as soon as his successor is chosen. What has he done? I'm resigning the presidency and leadership of Fine Gael and will resign as Taoiseach, that's of course Prime Minister, as soon as my successor is able to take up that office. He said that he had asked for a new leader of the party to be chosen on April 6th, allowing a new Prime Minister to be elected after Parliament's Easter break. He said it was the right time to step aside. My reasons for stepping aside are personal and political, but mainly political. Nothing else lined up. I have nothing in mind. I have no personal or political plans. What has Varadkar gotten himself into? We know that Jacinda Ardern left office because she's a coward and knew that her party would get stomped in the elections. What a wuss. We know that many Republicans who are rhinos and Democrats have retired from the House and Senate because they're political cowards and they could not withstand the withering assault coming against their failed policies. Why is this guy leaving office after just coming to America days ago? What's going on in Ireland? What's this all about? Why is the Irish Prime Minister resigning? What is that all about? Stay tuned for more stories. Meanwhile, in France, the belligerent, saber-rattling morons in La Français, les François, oh man, I'll tell you what, I can't even say it right now. The French trying to expand the war in Ukraine, offering to send troops to Ukraine. These people are dangerous and must be removed from government as quick as possible at the ballot box or through recall, however that process works. Pierre Schill, chef d'état-major, l'armée de terre s'étend prêt. The chief of staff of the army says, the chief of staff of the military says the army is ready to go. À l'heure de les foyers de crise multiplient, la France, nation cadre de l'OTAN, a des atouts majeurs. Outre la dissuasion nucléaire, elle dispose de forces entraînées et interopérables avec les armées alliées, expliquait le général d'armée dans une tribune au Monde. Wow, this is dumb stuff by the French. NATO ally could command a 60,000 strong force in Ukraine. What is the purpose of France going to Ukraine to have French soldiers die for the grifter in chief, the penis piano player himself, Volodymyr Zelensky? What is the purpose of sending 60,000 French troops to Ukraine? This is the height of folly. This is moronic. When we did things like this in 1918 in Arkhangelsk, sending Western countries to fight against the communists in Russia, and we sent them to the Far East. When we did this in the 1930s, Russia did not have nuclear weapons. What kind of moron in Paris thinks it's a good idea to send French troops to Ukraine? Wow, these people are dangerous. I thought Joe Biden had lost the plot, but Emmanuel Macron has clearly lost the plot. The threat posed by Russian security in Europe means that the continent must boost its defense capabilities. French troops are ready for the toughest engagements, the commander of the country's ground forces has said, as President Emmanuel Macron mulls an official military deployment to Ukraine despite repeated Russian threats of retaliation. In an op-ed published by the French daily Le Monde, which I just showed you, General Pierre Schill, France's ground forces chief, said his forces are ready if called upon and that a display of French military muscle would deter any attack on France. You think? I don't. Macron is at the forefront of an idiotic, nascent proposal by a handful of NATO nations that are reckless to discuss sending allied forces into Ukraine in training and advisory roles, though not as combat troops. The Baltic states of Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, as well as Poland, have expressed support of Paris's position, though large NATO states like the U.S. and Germany are opposed. Thank goodness. This is foolish beyond belief. Can you believe the French are this stupid? Are they this stupid? Well, apparently they are this stupid. Well, let's switch our attention now, ladies and gentlemen, here to the United States, where another round of primaries took place yesterday. My primary doesn't take place until April 23rd, but the primaries in 5 states took place yesterday, including Ohio, the battleground state of Ohio. Donald Trump won all the primaries. Joe Biden won all the primaries. No surprise there, but wait till you see the margins of victory and then see what the press had to say, the dishonest press. So, key races. So, 5 states, Ohio, Illinois, Kansas, Arizona, and Florida. In Florida, Donald Trump got all 125 delegates, and he won by 67%. In Kansas, he won by 59%. In Ohio, he won by 65%. In Illinois, he won by 66%, and in Arizona by 59%. So in Florida, he won by 67%. What that means is not that he got 67% of the vote. That means his margin of victory was 67%. So Joe Biden won by 74, 74, 88, and 86. All right? So slightly higher than Trump. And this is what the media had to say about it, the dishonest. Donald Trump suffers brutal Florida primary vote against him. While the former president won the primary with almost 1 million votes, 81.2% of the overall share, some 197,000 people, no, 197,000 Republicans didn't vote for him. Wow. Voted for Haley or Ron DeSantis, despite both candidates having dropped out of the race. DeSantis got 3% of the vote. Results suggest the former president losing support in Florida compared with the previous election. That year, he won 94% of the state vote in the primary. Okay. See, that's just dishonest. In 2020, he had no opponent. There were no opponents. They were all gone. No one was on the ballot. They're all gone. So there are people on the ballot, and it's just a protest vote, and they act like it's a brutal result. Meanwhile, the Florida Sentinel, or the Tallahassee Democrat, reports the following. DeSantis finishes far behind Nikki Haley in Florida primary. Here are Tuesday's election results. Wow. DeSantis withdrew from the race in January after poor showings, so he wasn't expecting to get a lot of votes in Florida, but he probably wasn't expecting to come in third in his own state by a wide margin. Yeah, okay. So, In preliminary results, Trump got 81.19% of the vote, according to the unofficial Florida division election. That's a commanding landslide, but still less than the 87% he received in Alaska when former UN ambassador in South Carolina, Governor Nikki Haley, was still running against him, or the 97% he got in Hawaii, or the 93% he received 4 years ago in the last Florida presidential preference primary. Well, we'll see what happens in November. Let's not get too carried away. United States Supreme Court allowed Texas to continue a law which is contentious on the border. It means Texas immigration law will go into effect as the appeals process plays out. U.S. Supreme Court Tuesday allowed Texas to enforce a law that would allow local law enforcement officials to arrest people suspected of being illegal immigrants. After the High Court temporarily blocked enforcement law, the Supreme Court issued a decision to reject an emergency request that was made by the Biden regime, which argued the states have no authority to enforce immigration law and that it violated Constitution's supremacy clause. Supreme Court's order provided no reasons, but Justice Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh filed concurring opinions. 3 Democrat-appointed Justices Kagan, Jackson, and Sotomayor, of course, dissented because they don't believe in the rule of law. So, immediately after that, the appeals courts got to work, and they have put a controversial Texas immigration law back on hold after the Supreme Court said that it could go forward. A federal appeals court late Tuesday night put Texas' controversial immigration law back on hold hours after the Supreme Court had cleared the way for the state to begin enforcing the measure. So apparently, when it comes to supremacy, an appeals court thinks that it's supreme to the U.S. Supreme Court, overruling the Supreme Court. That's not what's going on here. That should not be happening here. Yep. In a brief order, a 3-judge panel at the Fifth Circuit of Appeals voted 2-1 to wipe away a previous ruling from a different panel that had temporarily put the law, which would allow state officials to arrest and detain people they suspect of entering the country, into effect. A panel of judges that issued Tuesday night's order is already set to hear arguments Wednesday morning on Texas' request to put the law, Senate Bill 4, back into effect, pending the state's appeal. One member of this court, Judge Andrew Oldham, publicly dissented, saying he would not let the law remain in effect for now. I would leave that stay in place pending tomorrow's oral argument in the question. So very confusing. Very confusing what's actually happening here because the federal government refuses to uphold the rule of law. The state is trying to do it. Well, this is just going to take your breath away, folks. Hang on a second here. Yeah, local district refused to revise the ballot to remove people who aren't on the ballot, and that's why the results are coming out the way they are. And that's exactly right. You're right, Mike. So this is just you're going to find it shocking, folks. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? This is shocking. An Obama-appointed judge has determined that criminal alien invaders have a right to keep and bear arms. Now, the Constitution is for Americans and legal residents of this country, not for criminals. Not for criminals. This is absolutely insane. U.S. District Judge Sharon Johnson Coleman ruled this month that an illegal immigrant could not be charged for carrying a loaded firearm. Heriberto Cabral Flores was charged by prosecutors under U.S. Code 18, Section 922, which prohibits illegal immigrants from carrying guns or ammunition. In her ruling, the judge, with a liberal track record, wrote the non-citizen possession statute violates the Second Amendment as applied to Cabral Flores. Thus, the court grants Cabral Flores' motion to dismiss. So, an illegal alien who violated our law and invaded America is now being protected by the Constitution. These people have no rights to our protections under the Constitution. It does not apply to criminals who invade our country. This is beyond reason. This is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. If I violate the immigration laws of South Africa and roll across the border and carry an unregistered firearm and I'm illegal, do you really think that I won't be deported or spend time in a South African jail? I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's bat crap crazy. Sharon Johnson Coleman. This is another example of how elections, as Obama said, have consequences. They do. We have idiots like this sitting on the bar. This must be appealed to a higher authority. This lunatic must be considered for disbarment or removal from bench. Now, Cabral Flores' defense team posed the argument the government could not show that Section 18 was part of the historical tradition that delimits the outer bounds of the right to keep and bear arms. What? Wow. Wow. Coleman acknowledges the ruling that he is a non-citizen. No, he's a criminal alien invader. He's not a non-citizen. He's a foreign national not protected by the Constitution. No, he's not. So by her definition, does that mean places occupied abroad or where U.S. embassies are at or U.S. military bases are abroad are subject to U.S. law, which is true, and that anyone that enters that property, including the foreign nationals of that country, are no longer subject to the laws of their own country, but subject to the U.S. law? This is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Wow. The court notes that Mr. Cabral Flores has never been convicted of a felony, a violent crime, or crime involving use of a weapon. Yeah, well, that's because he's a criminal. He's a felon. He invaded our country, and he has been prosecuted by this corrupt regime. Wow, this is absolutely bat crap crazy insane. What kind of moron lets this go? That's unbelievable. All right, folks, now it's time for this horrific story, and it's going to be a tearjerker, so I just warn you in advance. So let me just say this. If I get choked up, I'll apologize in advance, but this thing just disgusts me. This is an absolutely disgusting story. So here's the story. An Ohio toddler died after mom left her home alone when she took a 10-day vacation. A judge called it the ultimate act of betrayal. All right, so I'm going to read from this story because it's just so horrific. It's hard to believe. So let me just get to that very quickly here. Oops. Am I live? Yeah, we're live. Okay. So Crystal Candelaro's daughter, Jaylin. Jaylin's cries echoed through the quiet streets of Cleveland in the dead of the night. The toddler whimpered and howled, but no one came to her rescue, and that alone is disgusting. Her mother, Crystal Candelario, was away on a 10-day summer vacation and had left Jaylin alone in a playpen with a few bottles of milk, according to prosecutors. A neighbor's doorbell camera captured the 16-month-old's frequent screams. 16 months old. Frequent screams, including one around 1 a.m. 2 days after her mother left. But Candelario was hundreds of miles away in Puerto Rico with a male friend. After a few days at the beach and another stop in Detroit, she returned home on June 16th last year to find her daughter dead. She had been gone for 10 days, leaving a 16-month in the crib. Candelario pled guilty last month to 1 count of aggravated murder and 1 count of child endangering. At her sentencing Monday, forensic pathologist Elizabeth Mooney told a Cleveland courtroom that children experience the most extreme separation anxiety between 9 and 18 months. She recounted Jaylin's excruciating final days. The pain and suffering she endured lasted not hours, not days, but possibly even a week, said the pathologist, fighting back tears. This feeling of abandonment for days on end, coupled with the pain of starvation and extreme thirst, is a type of suffering I don't think any of us could ever fully fathom. A judge sentenced Candelario on Monday to life in prison, making a final chapter of a case so grim that investigators involved described as the most horrific they'd witnessed in their careers. Law enforcement officials, including Cleveland Police Sergeant Teresa Gomez, fought back tears to describe the baby's condition. This is a case that will have branded in our minds and our hearts forever, she said. Assistant Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Anna Fergarilla played security video of the mother hauling her suitcase to a car on June 16th and returning on June 16th. Minutes after she returned, she called 911. "Please, I need help," she wailed. Please help me. My daughter's dying." Candelario had dressed Jaylin in a clean outfit before emergency responders arrived, but the change of clothes did not hide the horrors the girl had gone through, and Candelario's sob story started unraveling. Ferrangalia said Jaylin was found lying on a mattress covered in urine and feces. Animals take care of their infants better. The girl was emaciated, with sunken eyes, dry lips, and fecal matter in her mouth and fingernails. She weighed 7 pounds less than she had her last doctor's visit 2 months earlier. Fecal matter. The child was so hungry. She ate her own feces. Cruel mother's parents pled with the judge for mercy. She said, "I'm not trying to justify my actions," the mother, "but nobody knew how much suffering I was going through. Spare me, woman." Speaking sternly, the judge told Candelario it left her child trapped in a tiny prison for days while she was out having a good time. The bond between a mother and child is one of the most purest, most sacred bonds. It's a relationship built on love, trust, and unwavering protection. You committed the ultimate act of betrayal. That little baby persevered, waiting for someone to save her. And you could have done that with a simple phone call. Instead, I see photos of you on a beach while your own child was eating her own feces in an attempt to survive. Judge sentenced her to life in prison without possibility of parole. Just as you didn't let Jalen out of her confinement until she died, so too you should spend the rest of your life in a cell without freedom. The only difference is that prison will at least feed you. What the hell is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? The child ate her own feces to survive. We didn't know these details last year when the story came out and I reported on it. It's sick. She went to Puerto Rico. Selfish, arrogant, uncaring, bestial creatures bearing children. Words escape me, folks. Words escape me. Shawnee, I agree 100%. And I said so at the time. Who ignores those cries for day after day? Go beat on that door. I mean, when a dog barks endlessly, I don't just ignore it for days on end. I go to see what's going on. Wow. People are sick, Dylan. It's very sad, Pip. And flesh and why did the neighbors investigate? Exactly. Yep. And Minaj Aqua says, why is there sick people on this earth? Why? I don't know, Minaj. It's, yeah, Eric, I don't know what to say either. It's horrible. No one should suffer such a horrible fate. That's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's cruel beyond belief. The child tried to survive by eating feces. It went on for days. What's wrong with those people not responding to that? That's insane. We used to live in societies and communities where people would aid their neighbors when something was astray, when something was awry. People would intervene. People would do something to help. How can someone ignore the cries of an infant that's 16 months old when you know there's a 16-month-old infant next door? Oh, she won't last long in prison. She'll suffer badly in prison. I'm ashamed too, Michael. I'm ashamed of the human community. I'm ashamed of the garbage that happens. The terrorists, the people that attack others for their skin color, the people that attack people for their faith, the people that attack children, the people that abuse children. It's sick and twisted. And I've got not a sad story like this, but one that's not going to surprise you, one that I've talked about. I've talked about before. I said one of the horrors that people never want to talk about is of course child molestation and incest. And I have an incest story coming up which will shock some people. Those of us who understand genetics and understand human behavior know that this is not a shocking story. However, it has come to light with data to support the argument that it is much more common than people realize. The mother's in her 20s, 30s, something like that. Yes, they did. They heard the child screaming, Menage a Trois. It's recorded on their Ring camera. It doesn't matter if there's mental illness, Tony Nash, mental illness. She booked the flight to Puerto Rico to have sex with a boyfriend and hung out on the beach when a child was at home. Did the boyfriend know she had a child? Did he ask what happened to the child? Look, I'm not making an excuse for anybody here. That little child's life, the horrific circumstances of that child's life, unbelievable. 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 All right, back to the stories now, folks. We have a few more stories. The Veterans Administration, after going on a hiring spree last year, is now sacking 10,000 medical staff. Well, thank you. I guess we're not going to get medical care. Following a record hiring effort last year, the Department of Veterans Affairs needs to trim 10,000 full-time positions, mainly from its medical staff. Wow. The department undertook a massive expansion the past several years to meet the needs of a growing beneficiary population. In 2023, the Veterans Health Administration staff grew by 7.4% by hiring 61,000 people for a net increase of 28,000 because people leave. The same year, more than 6,000 employees were hired by the VA Benefits Administration, another arm of the VA. But the record hiring and improved retention, especially within the Health Administration, means the department now needs to cut 2% of its 458,000 member workforce as it continues to provide increasing medical care and benefits for services for veterans. I'm sorry. So in order to increase medical benefits and care for veterans whose cases are backlogged for days, months, weeks, years to get their resolution for their percentage and for the medical care and authorize many of them dying before they ever get their veterans benefits, now you're going to cut 10,000 workers? How is that going to solve the problem? Gabrielle, I didn't hear about that in the case in Italy. What the hell is wrong with people? Well, an Arizona lawmaker feels the need to politicize the fact that she's going to abort her child. This is repulsive. Yeah, 43-year-old pregnant Arizona lawmaker revealed in a speech at the State House, State Senate, that she was planning against abortion, says she wanted to share with her colleagues and the public the practical effects of abortion restrictions passed over the years. So to exploit politics, she is going to have an abortion. Why is she getting pregnant at 43? This is not the first abortion she's had. You live in a different country, you don't get that care. There's a program for that, though. Democratic Senator Ava Birch, surprise, surprise, a Democrat of Mesa, told fellow lawmakers in a floor speech on Monday that she was going to get an abortion because her pregnancy is no longer viable. The first-term lawmaker, who previously worked as a nurse practitioner in a women's health clinic, described a rough journey with fertility and recounted miscarriage she had suffered. The 43-year-old Birch criticized restrictions in Arizona as being out of touch, saying the state law requires an ultrasound that her doctor didn't order and that she was given what she regards as disinformation about alternatives to abortion. So you're a member of the state legislature and you're not bright enough to find the correct information about what an abortion is or what pregnancy is. Not a first pregnancy. She said, it was an opportunity for me to highlight what we're experiencing here in Arizona and how the laws that we pass in Arizona actually do impact people in practice and not just in theory. So political grandstanding, she's terminating her child. The abortion that Birch is planning won't be her first. While running for office back in 2022, she had an abortion because the pregnancy wasn't viable, and even mentioned on the campaign trail that she had undergone the procedure. She previously gave birth to 2 sons, and she understands why women have abortions, keep that information private, but she said she wants the public to know the struggles she experiences are common. No, that's not the case. She is a repulsive, political grandstanding figure who is using the termination of the child in her womb for political advantage. People like this are disgusting. Yep. The Arizona Supreme Court is considering the fate of an 1864 law. Yep. Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, former Trump advisor Peter Navarro has been sent to federal prison for failing to violate the law. He upheld the law protecting executive privilege, which is what the president has in his private conversations and notes. Congress has no right to some of that information, and Peter Navarro protected that right. Therefore, he was found in contempt of Congress. So the former official, the 70-some-year-old gentleman, is being sent to federal prison for 4 months for being in contempt of Congress. Wait about that charge. So Peter Navarro, an ex-White House aide to former President Trump, has reported to a federal prison in Miami, making history as the first former White House official to be in prison for a contempt of Congress conviction. He was sentenced to 4 months in prison for his refusal to comply with the subpoena from the House Select Committee that investigated the January 6th Capitol attack. Before reporting to jail, Navarro spoke for 30 minutes at the gas station, called a case against him an unprecedented assault on the constitutional separation of powers. He claimed the legal practices that were used against him would be used against Trump. I'm pissed. That's what I'm feeling right now. God bless you all. See you on the other side. So, the reason I mention this is, let's talk about that. Peter Navarro, contempt of Congress, sentenced to prison. Eric Holder. The House has voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt of Congress over his failure to turn over documents related to the Fast and Furious scandal, which led to the murder of American customs officials. The first time Congress has ever taken such a dramatic move against a sitting cabinet official. The vote was 255 to 67, with 17 Democrats voting in support of a criminal contempt resolution, which authorized Republicans to seek criminal charges against Eric Holder. Eric Holder committed a crime, a criminal crime. He didn't simply uphold the procedure of separation of powers by protecting executive privilege. He violated the law as a cabinet official. Peter Navarro was an advisor to Trump, not a cabinet official. So what happened to Eric Holder? Remember this? No criminal prosecution of Holder for contempt. Friday, July 6th, 2012. The White House and Justice Department made clear Friday what had been expected all along. Attorney General Eric Holder will not face criminal prosecution under the contempt of Congress citation passed by the House. Legal experts noted in the run-up this week to Thursday's House vote that President Barack Obama's assertion of executive privilege in the case would prevent a criminal prosecution under practice dating to the Reagan administration. How is it that executive privilege applies to Eric Holder, who committed an actual federal crime, but it does not apply to Peter Navarro, who committed no such crime? Eric Holder, guilty of contempt of Congress, no action taken. Peter Navarro, guilty of contempt of Congress for upholding executive privilege, which is what Eric Holder did, and he goes to jail for 4 months in his 70s. This is a sick perversion of justice. People need to be aware of this. This is why I'm running for office. I'm sick of this garbage and the use of the judicial system and Congress to punish law-abiding American citizens. Unbelievable. You think we forgot about Eric Holder? You morons in the press? This is from CNN site, not even an archive. It's searchable. I found it like that because I knew about it. But no discussion by CNN about how Eric Holder skipped town, how he never suffered a penalty for his crimes against his country. Well, here's the scary story I want to tell you about, folks. Notice how we go from 90 to 5 miles an hour. So, incest. Ooh, there's a nasty topic. DNA tests like 23andMe and Ancestry.com are laying bare the frightening extent of incest in the U.S. Now, before people start making jokes about incest in the U.S., this is a global phenomenon. I guarantee you, it's the same in South Africa, in Botswana, in Germany, in Russia. I guarantee you, China, same thing. It's human. It's human. But this story is from the Daily Mail, a British paper. It's about the U.S. So, including a woman who discovers her ex-lover was her brother. Yikes. Previous estimates put children born of incest at 1 million. But that's really 1 in 7,000. 1 in 7,000. Wow. That's a lot. 1 in 7,000 children are born as a product of incest. So, that means for every million babies born, 142 are the product of incest. Yep, DNA tests that arrive in mail, including Ancestry.com and 23andMe, are exposing the uncomfortable extent of incest in the United States. The tests run about $100, unless you get them on special, like Black Friday specials or Amazon Prime specials. Can't say explicitly whether someone is a product of incest, but the results can be taken to a third party for testing, which can confirm it. One person who found out the disturbing truth about her family history was a 39-year-old Victoria Hill, who at a high school reunion got chatting about family trees with an ex-boyfriend with whom she was once intimate. His family makeup was similar to hers, and upon talking to her, took the same test. The text sent to her confirmed what they had feared, saying simply, "You're my sister." Ooh! She says she's still traumatized to this day. Meanwhile, Virginia native Steve Edsel found out via Ancestry DNA that his parents were first-degree relatives, either siblings or father and daughter. He radiated anger at the thought of the origins of his conception, likely the result of a sexual assault of his mother carried out by his grandfather. The prevalence of incest in the U.S. is far more common than previously thought, with research including common genealogy tests putting the rate at 1 in 7,000. Dr. Jim Wilson from the University of Edinburgh, who conducted the research, said that's way, way more than I think many people would ever imagine. It's a far cry from the 1975 estimate in a psychiatric textbook, putting the rate at 1 in a million. DNA tests that arrive in the mail, including Ancestry, can be helpful tools in determining whether someone has genetic predispositions for certain conditions. They can occasionally learn about disturbing truth about their parentage. Babies born of incest are at increased risk of suffering birth defects, developmental delays, genetic disorders such as blindness, hearing loss, neonatal diabetes, and limb malformations. The risk of two siblings or a parent and child having a baby are manifold. When two closely related people have sex and the female becomes pregnant, there is an increased risk of recessive gene disorders. It's because the children receive one copy of genes from each parent, with the harmful genetic mutations known as recessive genes being overridden by dominant genes. People born of incest may feel like they cannot reproduce for fear of giving birth to a baby with life-threatening genetic anomalies. But I don't know that that's true. You're having a child with someone outside of that circle. So 64-year-old Teresa Weiler said she found out in 1985 that her father was her mother's brother. She said, it was only when I was walking the streets afterwards in a daze that it hit me. I could never be a mom. There's no way I could risk having a damaged baby. Meanwhile, Steve was born with a heart murmur that required 2 surgeries when he was a teen. A possible product of 2 sets of the same genes and mutations, though he and his wife Michelle, who has helped him on his search for the truth, can't say for sure his ancestral origins were the cause. He grew up in a foster home, was always curious about his biological family. He took his ancestry test as part of a quest to track down his birth mom, who had given up shortly after giving birth when she was 14. He also enlisted the help of C.C. Morris, who specialized in locating people using DNA matches, a method that found and led to the imprisonment of the Golden State Killer. Remember that? Since working on Steve's case, Miss Moore now knows that well over 1,000 additional cases of people born from incest. Most of the cases were between first-degree relatives, while the rest were a product of second-degree relatives like half-siblings, uncle, niece, and grandparent, grandchild. Steve was able to find a support group set up by Miss Moore for people in his situation, and members have complained of a host of issues, including autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, eye problems. However, it's difficult to pin down incest as the cause. One support group member, Mandy, whose last name was withheld for privacy, found out her father was her mother's uncle. Her mother, a cruel woman, was 17 when she gave birth to Mandy, while her uncle was in his 30s. Her mother treated her worse than her younger brothers, and Mandy now understands that it had to be the reason behind her mother's cruelty, but the situation still makes her uneasy. Wow. So typically if someone wants to test for possible incestuous relationship, they have to upload their genetic material to a third-party service. Third-party tests look for runs of homozygosity, or ROH. The genomes of children born of incest show an absence of heterozygosity, which explains why their DNA contains big chunks that show the father and mother's genetic contributions are identical because they themselves shared much of their genetic code. In Denver, influencer and realtor Selena Quinones decided to take a DNA test in 2016. It revealed that she and her husband had a genetic match of 62 centimorgans, a unit of measured genetic linkage, meaning they share ancestors 8 generations back. She said, I was in shock. I was a little depressed over that. To be eight generations. Come on, grow up. When we started, there was Adam and Eve. How many, they obviously, kids, stop it. That could carry to about 8 generations. Your parents being siblings or your grandparents diddling their grandkids or uncles and aunts having, that's something to be upset about. But 8 generations ago, come on. It's a human community. Get over yourself. Yep. Incestual relations have received increased interest and attention in recent years, in part thanks to the 2004 documentary about the deformed inbred Whitaker family in Odd, West Virginia. Well, there you go. Well, there you go. That's the last news story we're going to share today. I think that's enough. Again, apologies for the emotional response to the story of the young child who died from the cruelty of her mother going on vacation to Puerto Rico, leaving a 16-month-old infant in a crib with bottles. 70 likes. Thank you for that. But that's only a number of births as a result of incest. What about Oh, well, yeah, Ken, given the fact that conception is something that happens just a small percentage of the time from intercourse, yeah, that's even scarier. Yeah, not incestuous, but complex. Widower marries daughter, widower's daughter, well, son marries widow. I'm not going to answer that question. It's too complicated. We have a place called Karatra where this happened on a regular basis. It's heartbreaking to see these people. Yep. Charles says, why should you apologize? No need. Well, because, it's an emotional response. So thank you for that. Genetic defects from inbreeding is a huge UK problem with their Pakistani invader. I agree. Okay. Thank you, Light Rain. Okay. That's why they groom white girls and impregnate them as sex slaves. Yep. Just another narrative to create another crisis. Incest will be a hell of a lot higher in South Africa. Something like that. Yeah, it is grown, Rizla, probably. Isn't it true that those tests allow the government and corporate entities to have access to each test taker's DNA? No, that's not true, Menage a Trois. Let me answer that question very specifically. The government cannot have access to your DNA results without a warrant. Unreasonable search and seizure applies. Now, if you publish your DNA and make it available to people, then they can find it. So that's how they find it. So you are protected against unreasonable search and seizure of your person and your belongings, and that includes your DNA test under, I believe it's the Fourth Amendment. The right of people to be secure in their persons, households, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The reason that woman, C.C. Moore, was able to help the law enforcement officials determine the Green River Killer or whoever it was, is because there was a cousin of that person who had publicly shared their DNA results because they're interested in ancestry. The matches were close enough because they had a DNA sample on file of that guy somewhere from one of the cases. They were close enough to that when they ran the DNA that it was reasonable cause for probable cause. So that publicly available information that a test taker took. So here's the thing. You can hide your DNA from people on Ancestry, and no one can get it unless a court has reasonable probable cause. However, if you have a family member, like I do, who has their DNA online that's publicly available, and they have your DNA like they have mine, the Army has my DNA, then you better not commit crimes because they can get access to it. Does that answer the question, Menage a Trois? But no, they can't simply, if I did an Ancestry DNA test and I did not make the results public for anybody, then Ancestry.com cannot share that with law enforcement. The reason that C.C. Moore was able to help the police is because it was publicly available from a cousin, which was sufficient to link the DNA based on the centum organs of separation in the DNA. They got a probable cause warrant. They took the DNA and compared it, and there you go. Does that help, Menage a Trois? No, 23andMe cannot trace back to Genesis. No, the problem is that DNA splits each time, so you can only go back so far. Although certain because of the slow rate of change of DNA, certain traits, Y DNA mutates at a very slow rate. Certain traits can be traced back to periods of time and groups. But yeah, Menage a Trois says thanks. You're welcome. Okay, so I hope that helped. All right. What did Fleshin say? My wife's old school had a problem when social workers told there was a man in the state who had fathered a lot of the children all going to her school. Yeah, that's true. Not incest, but very disgusting. Okay, cool beans. All right, so yeah, some disturbing news today. Sorry to share that with you folks, but that story about that child, I mean, that's just heartbreaking. I mean, and the fact that the neighbors did nothing, that's almost worse than the mother abandoning her child. Someone could intervene. Where is the humanity of people that they just didn't intervene to help this child wailing and screaming? It's horrible. I mean, I cannot imagine that. My sister was an infant, and I raised her as a teenager. I held her, I fed her, I changed her, I comforted her, I burped her. It's just, I cannot. No, I don't think the neighbors can be held liable, Menage a Trois. There's no good Samaritan law that would force them to do something. But it is beyond sick. It's horrific. This is a sick world. And the problem is the bigger the world becomes, the more people are on the planet, the more opportunities for twisted people like this to be around. She wasn't a girl, Shawnee. She's an adult. She lived on her own with her child. And she left the child in a crib, gave her a couple bottles, milk sours after day. What the hell was she thinking? She went outside with her suitcase, loaded it in a cab or in her car, went to the airport, flew to Puerto Rico. Already her child's life is neighbor just by the time she gets to Puerto Rico. She spent 7 days there. Then she flew to Detroit for 3 days. Then she went home 10 days after she abandoned the child on June 6th. I'm breathless. I mean, I'm speechless. I mean, what do you say about that? Yep. How did no one ask where this? Well, that's a very good question. The grandparents must have known that the daughter was in Puerto Rico if they're following social media. One could presume. We don't know. But then as for leniency, I could not. I mean, if I had a child, an adult child, if I had a daughter who had my grandchild, and she's in her 20s or 30s, and she did that, I would not even be at the trial, or if I was called to testify at the trial, I would say, fry her. Yeah, exactly. They come out afterwards. Well, that's what happened. Nobody did anything when it was happening. The child's wailing. They have it. They have it on Ring doorbells, which recorded the child wailing. Child was 16 months old, Charles. 16 months old. It's sick beyond belief. Ex-girlfriend's mother left her in the linen cupboard and left. Yeah, the world is a sick place, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how such things can happen. Here's the child's picture. Jalen. Her mother was on a 10-day summer vacation, left her alone in a playpen with a few bottles of milk. A neighbor's doorbell camera captured the 16-month-old's frequent screams, including one around 1 a.m., 2 days after her mother left. Oh, man. It's a messed up world. An absolute messed up world. It's crazy. Was she suffering postnatal depression? Either that or the mother has some serious psychological issues. Well, it really doesn't matter whether she has psychological issues or not. The child suffered horrifically and is dead, and no one intervened. Shawnee says being a mother is just the best feeling. To do that to your own human, just wow. Yeah, exactly, Shawnee. It's inconceivable. Well, I mean, look at what's going on with Jocelyn Smith, little Jocelyn Smith in South Africa. We don't know what her fate is. I mean, I don't want to, speak ill, but I mean, at this stage, one can only presume that child has been chopped up for Moody. It's unbelievable. Something happens all too frequently to colored children and albinos in South Africa. These sick, twisted people. Yeah, unbelievable. Remember the case I talked about in Port Elizabeth in Eastern Cape a couple of years ago, in which the babysitter was an albino. And she was like 11 or 12 or something, or 13. She was 13, I think it was, 13 or 14. She was an albino, and she was babysitting an infant. They came for her. They grabbed her and the infant, and when they left, they saw the infant wasn't an albino, but the infant was black. So they tossed the infant into a ditch where it drowned or suffocated or something like that. An infant, just a few months old. They took her. They forced her to drink antifreeze. And they murdered her and chopped her up and sold her to black Africans in Sandton. Her body parts. Sick people. Sick people. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure Jocelyn Smith is dead. Now, if in fact her mother and boyfriend did it, which we don't know, they're accused of some crime related to this. If in fact they did it. What's going on here? There we go. My link was dead there. If in fact they did it, I mean, talk about betrayal, selling your own child. That's insane. I mean, this happens all the time in Bangladesh and in India, where poor women sell their daughters into sexual slavery to brothels, and little boys too. It happens all the time. The world is sick. It truly is. The Italian case, the mother's 37, the baby's 16 months. Wow. No, it's not confirmed that Jocelyn is dead. No. Don't anyone, we never stated that. No, we implied that. You shouldn't infer that. At this stage, though, what other conclusion can we have? Beginning to sound like Uncle Paul's bedtime story. Sad that this is reality and not stereotype. No, it is. It is really sad. It's a twisted world. I mean, look at this sick bastards in Cabo Delgado who were chopping up Mozambicans and putting them in wheelie bins. Black people doing this to black people. People also forget the horrific things that happened in Rwanda. I can't imagine murdering someone with a machete. What a twisted world we live in. Time-wise, I'd have to agree with you, says Charles. Menage Quas says he's heard human trafficking is picked up in Niger because soldiers are looking new ways to earn money. I have no idea. I've not heard any reports on that. But unfortunately, Niger is a long-established human trafficking and smuggling route for cigarettes, for contraband, for drugs, for human trafficking through Niger, across the Sahel, and through the Sahara. That's a long-established route. The Bedouins, the Tuaregs have long done this. Yeah, humans need to stop mistreating other humans. Agreed, 100%, Shawnee, 100% with you. No doubt about it. Anyway, sadistic people. Yeah, there are ghoulish people out there. Well, it's not just Africa, Hendo. Look at America. We're going backwards now, too. It's frightening, to say the least. Yeah, anyway. It's a sick, sick world. It's a cruel world after all. Yeah. Anyway, folks, I don't know what to tell you about this crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff. I won't be doing my radio program tonight for those who actually tune in at that late hour to listen to the Common Sense Conservatives. I have a campaign event this evening. Well, it's becoming a campaign event, but it's actually just a regular event that happens every year. The Republican Party hosts the Lincoln Dinner in honor of President Lincoln and the history of the Republican Party. So I'm going to that tonight. I've been asked to give the invocation. I'm not a pastor, but I was asked last night to give the invocation, and so I said I would do it. Anyway, yep, do unto others as you would have been. Yeah, well, Tony, so she's going to have done unto her some pretty nasty stuff when she gets to prison. Oh, people do not like child killers, especially someone like that. She is going to have to be in protective custody if they want her to stay alive. Yep. A Lincoln Dinner, yep. Did you write what you're going to say already? I have not, Shawnee. I've already thought through what I'm going to say. It's a short one, nothing long. I went to an event recently, a school board meeting, and I was outside, waiting outside for it to start, and some people came up and they said, do you mind if we pray? I'm like, not at all. And they said, no, we asked because last time we were here and people get all snitty because we had prayer. I'm like, well, people should respect your beliefs. They shouldn't be snitty. You're not in the school, you're outside, outside the building. So people began to pray. One person, offered a prayer. There was a pause, another person offered a prayer. And then the crowd grew, and I hung out with them. And it became a prayer circle at some point, something I don't usually participate in. But eventually, after about 15 or 20 minutes of prayer, that was a bit longer than I've ever seen prayer. So I headed inside because it was almost time for the event to start, or I thought it was. Yep. So Zuma's appeal to remove the prosecutor failed, but they still want to appeal the appeal. Yeah, exactly, Mary. They just want to appeal the appeal, to appeal the appeal, to appeal the appeal. Yep, Dylan, your faith is your own. Your faith is your own. That's true. A Lincoln Dinner. Andreo says, I'm impressed, Chris. What are you impressed by, Andreo? What are you impressed by? Please share with me what you're impressed by. Please share me, because I'm curious. What are you impressed by? I'm nice to hear that, but it's purely a delay tactic. Of course it's a delay tactic. Zuma will never go to jail for his purported crimes. Never. Dr. William Kesey will never go to jail for what the Special Investigative Unit said were obvious crimes. They claimed that he had crimes, no question about it. So he will never go to jail for that. Simple as that, folks. Yep. Anyway, so this news broadcast today was a little difficult and challenging, mostly because I knew I was getting to that story. It's very disappointing. But don't forget, folks, the IOL website is up if you want to check out about political parties. We'll see what happens from here on out. Yep. Pray to protect the women and children and treat thy neighbor as thyself. Yeah, that's good. Yep. Ace is still running around free. Yep. Ace Magashule, Zandile Gumeda, Cyril Ramaphosa. The list is endless. I mean, where do we start? Jay-Z's been at the Stalingrad approach since before he even became president. Exactly. Well said, Garrett. Yep. If one goes, then others will follow, and they know this. Yeah, exactly. That's why they're not going after one, because once they've got one convicted and in prison, it just, it goes from there. Oh, it's more than 7 years, Mary. This arms deal, people knew was crooked when it happened, and they didn't start prosecuting it till a good decade later. So throw that on top of that, 7 years. Zuma had his day in court, and that is not another that is calling running away from law. Yep. Thank you for sharing the story, Chris, about the child. It takes guts reporting this. Well, thank you, Andrea. It was, yeah, it's difficult stuff. I don't shy. Look, I don't do stories that I can't confirm or I can't get reliable sources for. At least, it's like, I was accused by. We haven't seen him in a while. Where is my buddy there, whose aunt was always attacking me? I haven't seen him on here in a while. His aunt was always attacking me. She said that my appearance on the Gareth Cliff show, I was a liar, and I didn't lie. I stated what had been reported factually at the time. And I also said so in a sarcastic manner anyway, so it really wasn't germane. But, is it Call Me Novak? I think it's Call Me Novak. It's his aunt. Are you here, Call Me Novak? I think it was you. Anyway, so I try to get reliable sources, and I don't like to run with stories sensationalists unless I've got something to support it. And I don't like to do clickbait stories, which another social media creator has been doing, which is getting a lot of views. So, but I'm not doing that. I'm trying to bring you real stuff, real analysis. Costume gang video chasing people. No, I didn't see that. What's that all about? What's 20 years, Ken? Oh, you're talking about for probably how long we've been waiting for justice against Jacob Zuma. Well, what about in Conla? He should have been in prison for that. That's a theft and misuse of state funds. I don't care if it's paid back. You don't get a Mother May I pass because people exposed your corruption. He should have been in jail for in Conla. Security upgrades, a fire pole. Okay, sure. The ANC themselves admitted that they have been lying about the fire pole all along, recently. Fikile Mabalula himself told us the truth. Yeah, I'd like his fire pole myself. That'd be fantastic. Advice for South Africa voting USA. You mean, are you asking for advice for South Africans who are voting from USA? I really don't have any advice to offer other than to vote. Yep. I am not here, says Ivan. Okay. Well, thank you for not being here, Ivan. I appreciate you jumping that in. Must be a bot that you have set to chat for us. Thank you for putting your bot on automatic. Well, you blame it on Zuma. I blame it on the ANC. The ANC are responsible for Zuma. ANC voted him in twice as president. The ANC sat by while the corruption and the dismantling of the state apparatus. The ANC voted to remove the Scorpions, which allowed Zuma to exist in the first place. It's the ANC that's responsible for Jacob Zuma. He's just the symptom. He's not the cause. The cause of South Africa's destruction is the African National Congress. That's it. Full stop. Full stop. Jacob Zuma is a symptom of the disease. The disease is the African National Congress and their rapacious kleptocracy. Yep. Yeah, and stupid. Well, we could even take it a step further. Blame ANC voters. Yep. Yeah, Jacob Zuma is a pawn on the board. He's not bright enough to do things himself. Mary says, funny how the number one person who pushed for Zuma and other members of the NEC's part in the arms deal is quiet now. Patricia DeLille is working for the... Yeah, you're right. Old Patricia DeLille. The woman who jumps from political party to political party. Yeah. And reinvents herself all the time. And colored voters vote for her just the same. Folks, stop voting for people because they look like you. I mean, unless you're running my race and you like the way I look because you also happen to have the skin color. You can vote for me. I'm just teasing. No, but stop voting for people based on affinity, based on appearance. Vote for them based on what they'll do for you and for the country. And when I say for the country, you can't be parochial and say, oh, well, I'm going to vote for the ANC because I get tenders. No. You are not supposed to be getting tenders from the ANC. Whether they're contracts or chicken tenders from McDonald's, you're not supposed to be getting anything from the ANC. You should vote for the best governance. You should vote for the people in America, in South Africa, in Germany, in Japan, in Taiwan, who will be honest and forthright and deliver and will fight for whatever your basic law is. In this country, we don't have a Grundgesetz. We do. It's just not called the Grundgesetz, which is the basic law of the Constitution of Germany. We have our Constitution, which means the same thing. So you must stand by the people who will defend that and get rid of the bums who do it for themselves or do it for you. Who do it for you. Oh, military aircraft flying over my head again. That's the C-130. Yep. The no good party. That's right. Yep. Political horse trading. Where is the Penthouse Penthouse magazine? Is that still around? Exactly, Chris. Leaders with substance. Yep. Choose wisely. Your life depends on it. So it's Tony Age. Yep. Well, that's why I'm running for office. And win the primary election and move on from there. Primary election is April 23rd. For those who are not aware that I'm running for office, here you go. So, boom, there you go. Running for that seat. Yep, lots of spineless governments out there, folks. Lots of spineless governments out there. Anyway, it's 1 hour and 30 minutes. I do have an appointment, and I go to see the doc at 2 p.m., so less than an hour and a half from now. It takes me a good 35, 40 minutes to get there. So I got to prep, go to that meeting, or not meeting, go to that appointment, and then I've got to do some other prep here for tonight. Put my thoughts together in addition to the ones I've already come up with for the invocation tonight. So, all right. And I'm prepared in case they ask me to do the closing, because that happens too. Anyway, thank you all so much. Where'd the time go? It feels like a Friday. It does feel like a Friday. Well, I did start early, so thanks for everybody who tuned in early. Appreciate that. Originally, I was going to do Wednesdays with the Colonel with Ronaldo, but it's no longer at noon for me, and my appointment was set up for 2 before daylight, was moved to 2. Daylight savings time originally was going to be 3, and I accounted for that, but that's moved back to 2 for availability. So that means 2 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock for South Africans. Is 7 p.m., 6 hours difference. And if I do that program, I won't make it to my medical appointment in time, so I couldn't do Ronaldo. We will do Ronaldo tomorrow, so you can tune in for that. Info in my emails. Okay, Mike, I'll have to look and see which emails we're talking about there. Lots of accounts. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Sad the governments are attempting to erode their constitution. They are. Be safe out there. And thoughts and prayers for the vulnerable around the world, particularly children who are at the mercy of others. To protect them, to feed them, to clothe them, to inculcate them, to educate them, so that they survive into adulthood and become functioning members of society. All too often, that just doesn't happen. God bless, folks, and have a lovely evening. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.